Everyone knows that Tasmania has the worst job opportunities for young people. The weather is terrible. The healthcare is even more shocking. And it's just a sleepy retirement state. So after living here for 3 years now, my partner and I's opinions and experiences are perhaps a lot more interesting and more nuanced than a lot of the popular thought around Tasmania. These points, shall I say, are based on our own personal experience, and that, of course, they may not reflect everyone's. Our opinions are based on our own experiences, so naturally you might have a different one. But we'd love to hear from you if you have lived in Tassie. What's your experience? Is it the same, or does it differ from ours? Please drop in the comments below. We'd love to read them. All right, let's get into it. So the first point that I will discuss is that Tassie healthcare is not all bad. This is a sentiment that is echoed a lot in conversations had or questions asked about what were the main considerations with moving to Tassie and healthcare is, from what I've seen up there with the list of negative feedback. I've heard a lot of blanket statements that healthcare in general is terrible. Now, I have to say that has not been my experience overall. I've had a mixed bag of experience, good and bad. So my first interaction with the healthcare system really here in Tassie was my son. He was born and raised here, and the pre-post delivery, all of it was in a regional hospital. I was a public patient, not a private patient, and I was nervous, I have to admit, having him here in this rural area, but my experience could not have been any different. It was absolutely fantastic, world class even. I had complications that were picked up towards the end of my pregnancy. So the fact that they were picked up and the care that I received and my son received was absolutely amazing. I could not fault it. In fact, I even wanted to stay at the hospital even after he was born. It was that good. So as I said, absolutely fantastic experience in that respect. Now, he did require a few pediatric appointments after his birth, and they had to be done in Hobart, and I was in northwest Tassie, and it was about a 4 to 5 hour drive. So, and we had to wait many months for that. Luckily, it was not a life-threatening condition, so we were able to wait. But I can see parallels with a lot of other sentiments being echoed, is that it can be really hard to wait for specialists, and sometimes they're not even in Tassie and they have to go to the mainland. So if, that might be a really big setback for a lot of people. And yes, in our experience, we did have to wait a long time to have these specialist appointment, and they could only be held in the capital city. So there's that. In terms of GP care, yes, we have had to pay as a private client. There are very few GPs who are completely bulk billed here in Tassie. Having said that, there are, I think, maybe 2 or 3 urgent care clinics that have been opened up in the state that are completely bulk billed. So there is an option there potentially for you. We have attended there once when our son had a pretty awful injury, and we were turned away and asked to go to the hospital because of his age and significance. So we didn't get any care there, but they do exist, fortunately. So yes, mixed bag for healthcare. So the next point is short and sweet, and that is that the public transport system here in Tassie sucks. And it does. There's virtually no trains to speak of. The buses, at least in Hobart, are poorly run. I think they're mostly private companies as well. So yeah, they're late, they don't run to time. There's no centralised payment system. I think they do accept coins, so that can be good. But overall, terrible. Up your game, Tassie. So when we moved to Tassie, we moved to a tiny town called Waratah in the foothills of the Tarkine rainforest. So we've done a lot of exploring around this area, and we've also done a lot of the west coast, Zeehan, Strahan, Queenstown, as well as the coastal areas, Stanley, Rocky Cape, and a lot of coastal towns as well. And even that pretty small space, they are so profoundly different. The landscapes are so different. Tarkine rainforest feels like you're in Gondwana land. You can imagine it all those years ago. It's like you're stepping into Fern Gully. It's got this magical, mystical experience. The coast is, I mean, a lot of us have had experience with the coastal towns, but it's just, they have their own little Tassie spin. Cradle Mountain, I'm sure a lot of us have been to Cradle Mountain. That is absolutely incredible. And so they're all just so in close proximity, yet so profoundly different. And we've barely even touched the east coast of Tassie and the south, and even the north and the northeast. We haven't done a lot of. We've been to Launceston, but that's probably about the extent of it in the north. So there's so much more to explore, but we are absolutely taken by what we've experienced so far, and we honestly could spend the rest of our lives travelling just in Tasmania, and I don't think even that would be enough. So the next point to mention is that the weather is not all bad. I think a lot of people, especially from mainland Australia, think the weather is always cold and it's always wet down here. And yes, there are places that have high rainfall and have low temperatures, and Waratah, where we live for the first 2 years and have a property, is the coldest and wettest place, I think, in the southern hemisphere potentially, or at least in Australia. Please let me know if I'm wrong. So yes, of course, there are places, but the capital city, such as Hobart, is probably not as cold and wet as you might think. It is actually the second driest city, I think, in Australia, second to maybe Adelaide. So it is very dry, and from my experience, most of the rain is overnight, and it's not usually dragged on. For example, in Waratah, it really sets in. So it really depends on where you are in Tasmania. And it's like, in terms of the cold, I would say, with the exception of really isolated pockets in the northwest of Tassie, it's not much colder than, say, the likes of Canberra or parts of country Victoria. So it's definitely livable. And I am a cold climate lover. So maybe I should put a disclaimer there, but it's doable. It's livable, in my opinion. And another really great aspect of the climate down here is the distinct 4 seasons, more similar to, say, the likes of the Northern Hemisphere. So in my opinion, the weather is great. So the next point on the list is that I believe Tassie has good early education, early intervention for babies and toddlers. And that is evidenced by, in my opinion, their Launch into Learning initiative. And that comprises of a couple of things. One of them is every week, I think most public schools offer a day a week where, similar to playgroup, you and the baby or the toddler and the parent or caregiver attend and you just play. But in the background, there's teachers and early educators who are observing the kids, and so they can pick up on any potential challenges, delays, difficulties, and bring that to the attention of the caregiver or parent. So that's brilliant, and I love that. And there's another initiative, Storytime, run by all libraries, I think, throughout Tassie. And the librarian reads books and interacts with the kids, and that's really engaging. And they also have like a 10 sticker program that they run. So every time you attend, you get a sticker, and after your 10th sticker, you are eligible for a free book, a new book as well. So my son absolutely loves Storytime. So we're big advocates for it, and I think that this is just part of a initiative that the Tassie government does to try and improve the poor literacy outcomes that are so often publicised. So as a parent, I'm really pleased about this. Okay, rolling on to the next point, which is employment opportunities. So naturally, it is a meaty subject, and one that a lot of people want to know more about if they're considering moving down here to Tassie. From my research, the biggest sectors or industries who employ down here is healthcare and social assistance is the main one. And just as an aside, my background is social work, although I'm not practicing it at the moment. In the past, when I have searched job sites, there has always been quite a number of roles available for allied health professionals as well as medical staff. So that's consistent with my experience. Other industries who are big employers down here is retail, education and training, and the Tassie state government is also a big one. So if you fall under these sectors or industries, you might be lucky and you might be able to potentially line up a role before moving down here. Sectors that might struggle are areas like finance, I'm thinking, tech, maybe the STEM, well, AI tells me the STEM areas would struggle, but perhaps there is a little bit of nuance here, because if, say, your background is sciences and it's in marine or the natural science, then perhaps you wouldn't struggle as much, because there is this CSIRO and Antarctica headquarters based in Hobart, and of course there is a lot of salmon fisheries here. So maybe if you're in those areas, you might struggle less than in other areas. Personally, I don't work in those areas, and I don't have any friends or family who work in those areas, so I can't personally comment, but that's just a thought that I had in my mind. Trades. I wanted to talk about this specifically because it's an interesting area and one that I think warrants a little bit more exploration. So if you wanted to line up, say, a role before moving down to Tassie and you have a trade, I think it would be a little bit difficult. Contrary to a lot of a popular opinion, like mining, forestry, hydrotas, they're not, statistically speaking, they don't hire a lot of people. A lot of it is machine operated, automation, etc. So when you're looking for jobs in those areas, it's actually really hard to come by. In the more rural areas, they do employ a little bit more because that's where a lot of the mines are. So they hire, the proportion of the rural population is quite high in working in mining and forestry, but statistically speaking, on the whole, they're not large employers. The main employers of trades are small businesses, but from our experience, they don't advertise on job websites. So a lot of it, and this is probably consistent for a lot of positions in Tassie and businesses, is word of mouth is king. So if you've got local contacts, use them. Even potentially local Facebook groups might also be helpful. and putting up a post and just putting out there. So that's what I would recommend. We have found, or I've found from just talking to locals and seeing responses on Facebook groups, and living in really rural areas, is that a lot of trades start their own businesses because there is such high demand and there isn't a lot of trades to meet the demand here. So I hope that helps if you're a trade. I do believe that there are opportunities out there for trades, but a lot of it might be boots on the ground. So the next point is the cost of living here in Tasmania. And we have found, with the exception of, say, housing, most things are more expensive. Consumables, food, etc. We found that a lot of that is more expensive. I think the majority of that can be attributed to shipping costs, say, from the mainland or elsewhere. There is an exception though. For example, power. It's really expensive here in Tassie, and definitely more expensive than when we were like Sydney prices. The interesting thing about that is that I don't understand why that is, because Tasmania, at least from my understanding, produces the highest amount of renewable energy compared to the rest of the mainland, yet we pay one of the highest prices, so go figure. But yes, it is quite expensive. However, the cost of buying and renting, comparatively speaking, on the mainland is more affordable here. In saying that, I do acknowledge that Hobart anyway, and I think Tassie at large, is in a housing crisis, and it is, for locals anyway, increasingly harder to find housing, especially in the rental market. So I say this not to cause any offence, but purely comparatively speaking, compared to the mainland, housing is more affordable. So kind of somewhat balances out. All right, another point to mention is the quality of food and beverages here in Tassie is phenomenal. And the reason that is because the raw ingredients, such as produce, meat, dairy, seafood, the fruit, the vegetables, everything is just fantastic. And in my opinion, and I think maybe somewhere else mentioned it as well, the best in the world. And I think there's many reasons for that, but from my understanding, it's the natural elements that really come together and just produce great food. Tassie has, I believe, the cleanest air in the world, highest air quality, and as well as the water. And that might have something to do with the proximity to Antarctica and being off the Bass Strait. I'm not sure, I'm not a scientist, but I think there is something to do with that. And in addition to that, the soils are extremely fertile. And again, I'm not completely sure, but I think the basalt in it, the fact that it was once, the volcano, there's traces, elements. Clearly, I'm not a scientist, but I think it all comes together and really just produces some yummy, yummy food. And so that's just, for a foodie like myself, it's just amazing. And I've just had that thought. I remember reading it the other day. Launceston was named a UNESCO City of Gastronomy, I think in 2021, and there is only about 50 cities in the entire world, so it's verified. It is the best place in the world for food. So if you're a foodie, you'll love it here. Top of my mind as well, coffee. This is perhaps a controversial statement, but in my mind, it beats Melbourne. I don't think I've had a bad coffee in Tassie. So that's another one. Amazing. All right, this next point I'm going to title Tassie Sentiment to Mainlanders. I'm a part of a number of different online forums, and I've noticed there are a lot of posts and comments from people around perceived or experienced prejudice against mainlanders, and I'm noticing that a lot of people are concerned about this, or it may even put some people off moving down here. So I just wanted to share my own personal experience, and that is that I and my partner have not experienced any kind of discrimination or ill sentiment from moving down here from the mainland. I would probably say the complete opposite is what we have experienced. We've moved to a tiny little town in the northwest. And then we moved to Hobart, a little bit bigger city, and no, we haven't experienced any of this. Everyone's been really welcoming. So I have to admit, I personally would question, has that person done their best to integrate into the community, to be positive, to give back, all that kind of stuff, because I couldn't have experienced anything different. Perhaps, at the beginning there might have been a couple of comments in jest about another mainlander moving down here, but maybe not even that. It's all like a non-issue for us. So I would hate to think that anyone wouldn't make the decision to move down here solely based on this, because that's certainly not been my experience, my partner's experience, and I know that's not the experience of a lot of other people as well. But for some reason, it's a real concern. So I hope this might alleviate some concern in this area. This last point I want to touch on is the size of Tasmanian cities and towns. Forgive me, my 18-month-old is running around. I've just thought about this point and I didn't include it, and I wanted to quickly chat about it. My partner's out, so my son's jumping around in the background, so I'll try get this out as quickly as possible. If you're from the mainland Australia, or indeed any other part of the world, your cities, major cities and satellite towns might be bigger than what is in Tassie. That's something that my partner and I did have to get used to. We now think it's a fantastic aspect of Tassie, but it is something that is quite different, we noticed. So they're generally a lot smaller, and they have a lot less services, cafes, cafe culture, all that jazz. They do exist, but they are less frequent than in mainland Australia. Even in rural and country areas of mainland Australia, they are generally more serviced than they are in Tassie. In saying that, you're not generally too far away from major cities such as Hobart, Launceston, Devonport, Burnie. You're probably no more than an hour and a half, 2 hours away max, but it is something that to consider. It is different down here. Woo! We've made it to the last point. Thank you for those who have stuck with me here. I know it's not the most visually engaging video. I'm filming in 5-minute increments while I have the spare moment between work and little one and renovations. Anyway, so the last point is off-gridders. So Tassie attracts a lot of people from my experience who want to live on the land. I think it might have something to do, well, there's probably many reasons, but perhaps the allure of the beautiful, pristine, natural landscapes and ecosystems that I talked about before. I think that invokes a real primal instincts to be as self-sufficient as possible and to live off the land. Well, that is certainly the case for myself and my partner. And there's probably a number of reasons. There are a lot of councils here, local councils as well, that don't offer connection to water and sewage and things like that. So that might be another reason as well. It's a necessity for some, and maybe less so like a sentimental desire, and that primal desire to want to provide for yourself, maybe provide for your family. Yeah, that there might be a lot of motivations, but it is definitely a I don't know if you would call it a move, a sentiment, but if that is something that you are interested in, living fully or semi, like I live and my partner live, we'll link a couple of videos here to give some context about our background and what our channel is about. Yeah, we really love it, and there are many others I'm finding also who live in Tassie who love this lifestyle as well. So my recommendation would be to join a couple of a few online groups. They're really the ones that I'm a part of anyway are really supportive and interactive, and jump on any questions or concerns anyone might have. So yeah, it's a good one. So thank you to everyone who has watched a part or all of this video. Please let me know down in the comments if you agree, disagree, have different experiences. I'd really love this video to generate a bit of discussion. And yeah, thank you for having me, and I'll see you in the next one.